We came out here to Las Vegas with part of our enterprises that we started. So the company that I'm the COO of and my daytime job, we call it the Standard by Black Market. And we classify ourselves now a full alternative products company with just THC. And then we recently have expanded and are launching next month our line of Amanita mushroom products and getting into that space. So, and then we have some other things coming out later in the year with like some wellness products and stuff that are non-psychoactive, non-psychedelic. And so moving completely into that alternative product space. And then out here in Las Vegas, we actually were awarded one of the cannabis consumption lounge licenses for the independent operators. And so Nevada had given out 40 licenses via lottery. 20 were to independent owners and then 20 were to dispensary owners. And it's for first of its kind in America. It's cannabis consumption lounges. Basically think of like Amsterdam or Spain, where you get to go to a club, purchase products, smoke them and use them on site. And then, or like a bar, but without the alcohol. So Las Vegas is going to be the first in the nation now having that happening. And so I came out here to Las Vegas to help start up and build out the operations out here.
That's exciting. That's really exciting stuff.
It's exciting to see how, cannabis is evolving and changing and how we're being able to remove the stigmatism, and you're starting to see it in more day-to-day products and more people use it, people that you would never expect. You got everybody from grandparents and older people, and then you have your business professionals and athletes and lawmakers and all the above everywhere in the middle. So I love it. It's an amazing medicine. And I'd like to talk to you guys about what you guys are doing. Mira Pharmaceuticals. Thank you guys for being here to represent your company, Adam and Erez. I appreciate you guys and want to talk a little bit about, I'm just going to dive right in with a question. I was reading online and I read about the new FDA approved synthetic analog of THC that you guys have. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just to correct. So we're not FDA approved.
Oh, you're not FDA approved. Oh, okay. Okay. I thought this would have said on your website. My apologies.
We're an early stage life science company doing preclinical work in animal models. We've developed a novel synthetic THC analog that's being designed for the treatment of anxiety and cognitive impairment.
Awesome. And that's the Mira One A that you're speaking of?
Yes, Mira One A is the name of the drug candidate.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that. Where did that start, that project start, and why?
Yeah, so I'll let Dr. Kaplin touch on that because he was in the the one that's doing the research on it. So I'll let him touch that question.
We had the opportunity to be working with the founder of the company, who is a businessman by training, but he also happens to be phenomenal at both getting the right people around him in terms of, the various expertise he needs, and also has the financial wherewithal to, take some of the ideas he has and actually synthesize them and test them. So I think that there were something on the order of 65 different patented structures. And this is the one that I got very excited about, as was Erez and a number of people, because it takes THC, changes it in a relatively subtle way, but that subtly has a big effect on its activity. The idea being of trying to add positive effects that weren't there before and to try to minimize some of the negative effects. So the way I think of it is, being a psychiatrist, is that originally people had been working with antihistamines. They changed the structure around a little bit, like we've done here with TLC. And when they changed the structure around, they got first antipsychotics and then antidepressants. That's where those drugs came from. So it's kind of like we're taking what Mother Nature invented here and trying to riff on it, if you will, and come up with a drug that will have some key differences that I think are important and has opened up doorways that were not even available to us prior to starting to take a look at the molecule.
Now, what are some of those differences? You said you added positive effects and removed the negative effects.
Yeah. So, the goal, obviously, my advisor and mentor when I was in training used to say all drugs are toxins. They just have positive side effects. So I would never say that a drug has no potential side effects. And of course, people can increase the dose and have side effects. But one of the main things that was exciting to us is we went to look at Mira One A in terms of the cognitive impairment, because, when people get high, many people find that it affects their cognition, particularly people who are vulnerable. So I treat a lot of patients with MS, and they're already vulnerable to have cognitive impairment, and the marijuana really does affect their cognition. So what we found in looking to see if we minimize the cognitive impairment, we found that actually in normal mice, it significantly improves their cognitive performance. So rather than go in the negative direction, it actually makes them kind of do better on tests, if you will.
Wow. I'm sorry about when I mentioned the FDA approval. I must have misread on your website. So with this being a cannabinoid pharmaceutical or synthetic cannabinoid pharmaceutical, is this going into practice? Like, is this something that you're going to see that people can take for medication here soon, or is this something that's still in trials?
I'll let Erez sort of give the general direction of the company where we are now and where.
Yeah. So while Dr. Kaplin is doing his research in preclinical models, we're moving this towards our toxicology work right now, so we can start our application for a new drug application for an IND. Okay. Our goal is to have this done early 2024, and with hopes to be able to get a study for a phase 1, phase 2 combined, potentially, if approved. And what we're looking to study is indications of anxiety and cognitive impairment in elderly early stage dementia patients. And we hope to be able to get into those phase 1, phase 2 by the end of 2024. And the goal is to have a prescription synthetic THC drug that can be available to patients by prescription that will be covered by insurance. And specifically, like Dr. Kaplin said, for the adult population, like the MS patients that he's treating, that, cannabis or traditional plant-based THC might not be the best course of action for them, they'll have another form of potential treatment to be able to deal with their anxiety while, not impairing their cognition. So it's really incredible how big the cannabis business is getting, right? I think in 2022, the number was Americans spent about $30 billion on legal weed, which was $10 billion more than chocolate sales last year, right? Which is tremendous. And I think we also passed beer sales. But what's interesting is people over 65 are now the fastest growing group of cannabis users in the United States. I mean, you can kind of call it like a senior moment, but it's really a senior moment. They're the ones that are outpacing the rest of the patient population who are using THC and cannabis. So for us, I'm very passionate about this because I like what THC does. I like what, nature intended for THC to do. And I'm all for people using THC in a positive way to help them with their health, to help them with their pain management, whatever they feel is beneficial that THC is bringing into their life. But what we're doing is we're, bringing something to market that will be addressing an unmet need of a patient population that's experiencing a cognitive decline, and that's maybe at a higher risk of falling and hurting themselves, or potentially not be able to get behind the wheel and drive because of their age and their cognition. And unfortunately, a lot of seniors today are not just taking 1 or 2 drugs. The average senior is taking about 3 to 5 different drugs, and that could be a mix of oxycodones and benzos and other anxiety medication. Just a mix of those cocktail of drugs can't be that great for your cognition, right? And ultimately, if we can provide a safer way of using THC for that population that has those issues and those negative side effects associated with THC, we feel that we're doing a tremendous thing for that patient population.
Agreed. It's amazing that you're talking about using a THC product to increase cognitive ability. That's completely the opposite, of what you think. And so is that how it's going to be marketed, is as a cognitive enhancer?
Again, it's we're not even at the stage of where we're marketing the drug.
Right.
Our goal is to get this approved. So we're really just focused on the development of the drug.
Understood.
And it's going to take us some time to be able to get it to an IND and into people, clinical trials. So that's where Dr. Kaplin is doing all his preclinical research.
Okay.
But so far, we've shown tremendous results in our preclinical trials in enhancing cognition in mice and alleviating anxiety, which is tremendous. Like you said, it's something that you don't expect to see when you're talking about THC having your cognition. That's why Dr. Kaplin and the rest of the team, as myself, are so excited about this drug, because as you know, there's about 55 million Americans who use marijuana in the past year. There's about 36 million Americans who use it monthly, and I think there is 50% more marijuana users than there are tobacco smokers. Mm-hmm. Right. So this is like really like it's accepted. There's a consumer acceptance, but Dr. Kaplin can speak to this. But if you're a practicing physician like Dr. Kaplin is and John Hopkins, he can tell you personally himself, he cannot prescribe marijuana to his patients. Having a drug like Mira One A that could potentially be prescribed to patients that don't really know their dosing, right? When you're smoking weed, you don't really know how much dosing you need to treat what it is you're trying to treat, whether it's pain, whether it's anxiety, and it's also not regulated. So you're not exactly sure what you're getting. And for a lot of patients, that could be an issue because they might be taking other drugs that might interact or, not interact well with marijuana. This will allow their doctors to be more aware of what they're taking and be able to give them a prescription and kind of monitor their, the symptoms that they're trying to treat.
So just to follow up on some of your question and Erez's response, it is the nature of FDA that they will only approve drugs for indications related to diseases. We can't say, gee, this will, improve people's cognition because that's not a disease. And so we are currently looking into the potential role of this drug in helping people. For instance, one of the great problems is the difficulty with Alzheimer's and dementia, the aging baby boomers and the like. So getting people perhaps early in the course of cognitive difficulties or what's called mild-cognitive impairment. Currently, there are no particularly good treatments for it, but in particular, there are no treatments that are able to give back some cognitive functioning that was lost. And then second, the other problem, as Erez mentioned, the reason why we can't prescribe marijuana at Hopkins is because no one can prescribe marijuana because it's still, according to the FDA, a Schedule I drug, which is, catching up with these two disparate sort of moving trends. So, this would give the opportunity for physicians to be able to actually prescribe a drug and move in that direction. So just wanted to...
So you're saying that this would not be considered a Schedule I?
Correct. Its structure is different from THC, and it's what's called a new chemical entity. It doesn't exist in nature. It's never existed. And because it doesn't go through an intermediate, which is a controlled substance, the DEA has evaluated it and determined that it is not a controlled substance based on their assessment. Now, we still have to go through the whole development process, but as of now and, foreseeably in the future, it is not a controlled substance. It's not good.
Maybe you could elaborate. I just have some questions on that. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more because so on my day-to-day with being in the hemp and Delta space, that's something that a lot of companies are battling right now with the DEA and them trying to constantly change their opinion on and redefine the hemp farm bill and come against what they call synthetic cannabinoids, And now you guys are able to make a synthetic cannabinoid out of THC and get DEA approval. How is that? Like, is it not from cannabis? Is it from hemp or is it not from either? Are you making the molecule? Like, how does that work?
So it's being synthesized. It's all, synthesized in a lab. Not such an easy job to do, by the way, because it doesn't exist. So you got to start from scratch. But because it doesn't have the same structure, it therefore isn't put into the same category. Now, there are examples of drugs that don't have the same structure. For instance, opiate-like drugs that weren't scheduled, like tramadol, that did eventually get put back onto a low schedule. It's not, a high schedule, but you still need, it is, I think it's schedule 4 or 5 for tramadol. So, sometimes these things change when long-term use and experience change. But as of now, we don't have any data to suggest that it is going to be a difficult sell for the DEA, because we don't have, at this point, any indications that it's addicting or has those side effects. So, we will not know until we get into people ultimately. As of now, it looks pretty good. And it's just the nature of the process. You look at CBD, the Farm Act was taken off scheduling. So, times do change, and we'll just have to see how it works. But because, if we can demonstrate that this doesn't have the negative side effects, such as cognitive impairment or, psychosis at high doses and the like, our hope is that we will be able to continue to maintain it, certainly not on the schedules that require intensive prescriptions and the like. So
it's awesome. Now, what type of toxicology studies and stuff are you guys doing? That's something that I think that this space needs on a whole. That's one thing that I believe that if we could get some more studies done would maybe help with descheduling, legalization, or even a FDA approval if we just had more toxicology reports on cannabinoids in a whole, on cannabis, on hemp, on the different singular cannabinoids. So what are you guys doing, and how are those tests coming out, if you can share?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to kill you after the interview. We tell you everything. No, it's in fact, the FDA has very prescribed specific kinds of tests that you have to do, ranging, showing that there's no what's called genotoxicity. It's not going to lead to genetic mutations. It's not going to have problems for people reproducing. Then it doesn't have problems with the heart or the kidneys or the liver and those kinds of things. And without inspiring people to call in with great distress, the FDA also requires some animal studies before getting into humans. So, and that includes testing maximal tolerated doses, not to make them sick, but just to find out where the levels are that, really knock them out or cause them to be very sedated before we get into humans. So it's an interesting point you bring up, Bryce. I don't know that it just hadn't occurred to me to have, it's expensive. Maybe that's
yes, yeah.
But it is a very interesting idea if someone were just to take the drug and, a drug or a synthetic analog as we're doing and take it through toxicology studies. That's very interesting as to what the FDA would do with that data. But anyway, it's we're not reinventing the wheel. This is a the FDA says these are the tests you need to do. We enlist the help of a company that has already demonstrated their ability to do these kinds of tests in a way that the FDA, recognizes is of the highest caliber and the like. And so that's where things are. As Erez said, we're just getting it synthesized in large enough quantities to be able to get all of the tests done. But the tests are underway, and we're excited.
It's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm very familiar. I know that toxicology tests and studies are very time consuming and then very expensive. I had a guest on the show about a month or so ago, Arvita Labs, JJ and Dylan Combs. JJ over there, he's their head chemist. He's comes from the pharmaceutical side of things. He's used to be a pharmacist. When they started doing different reactions with cannabinoids, one in particular, HHC, hexahydrocannabinol, they did a toxicology report on that. And they compared it to, they did heart, lung, and renal functions.
Yeah.
And they compared it to a over-the-counter, widely used allergy medication. And those studies showed that it was not even close to the toxicity of the over-the-counter medication, like not at all. Didn't even hit the charts, and that product comes with an FDA approval. And so they did actually share that with the FDA, and you were like, it'd be interesting to see what the FDA thought about. They didn't think very good of that. They didn't recognize it at all, and didn't really didn't engage in conversation with them afterwards. But on that particular subject, now they are still engaging with the FDA on some other things and trying to get approval with their lab and stuff. But it's interesting. I think we just need more of it. I think we just need more people trying to prove the point of that this is a safe product, especially with all the products that we take in our day-to-day lives that have, if we really looked at the side effects, probably some very negative side effects. I mean, it's crazy. You see a new drug every day put on the TV, and then there's always the side effect of possible death. It's like, okay,
Right.
Yeah, that's what I want to take, So nature gives us so many things that if we just use them correctly, or maybe engineer them, I think that's an important part. And I hate the way that synthetics, especially when it's came into cannabinoids, and it has been because of the hemp Delta 8 craze, but synthetics have gotten a bad name. But it's like people forget that we use synthetic products in our day-to-day life all the time. We consume them all the time, and it's not even a question. You don't even think twice about it. You grab the drink out of the fridge and you start chugging. But if that same thought process could be converted over to cannabis and natural medicines, and realize that, these components aren't always abundantly found in the plant. And so, yes, they're there in minor quantities. So we have to synthesize them to be able to use them. But when they're, when it's done properly, it's clean, it's safe, and has amazing benefits.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think your level of discussion of this is, impressive. I've not heard anybody sort of appreciate both sides, I think, of the coin. But the other side of the coin is that not only showing the toxicity, but having the regulation that you know what you're getting. Now, don't get me wrong, there's something really nice about being able to go to a dispensary and have someone take you through it and take the time. I mean, I wish clinicians did the same thing with patients, is took the time, took them through the medicines. But the problem is that when people have looked at, for instance, the THC content products that are available, only, 1 in 5 had the dose that they that. But what was interesting is, you might say, well, everybody was, lower dose. So that's not true. Actually, about a third of them had increased THC for what they said. So, it's hard. It's a movable feast right now that you can't be sure. Now, if you go to the same place and there's some consistency there, but I just think for, not only the individual susceptibility, some people get paranoid, some people don't, but also just to have consistency in what you're getting. I think the toxicology is important, but also the consistency. And it's, again, hard to get that if, just the nature of the beast. If you're not regulated, people just, it's more expensive to, to make sure it's the same thing every time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I'm definitely for. I'm for regulation as a whole across the board. There's some finer points to that of how we need to regulate it. Because if it's regulated one way, it'll have a complete opposite effect than all of us are trying to have. And if it's regulated the other way, then it can be very beneficial and allow for the industry to continue to grow and for products to continue to become better. But we do need that regulatory testing. I mean, I know in many different states, I know like Colorado is one, for example, there's an allowance of 16% plus or minus on your final potency reports. So like you said, it might be lower, it might be higher, and you have no idea. And for, a first time user, if they're coming in and they're wanting to get something that's low dosed because they don't want to have the paranoia, and all of a sudden they get something that's way higher than what it says, and that sends them into a paranoia and they're freaking out. And then you get those bad reports. That's when you get the bad reviews of cannabis, people calling in, people going to the emergency room. That same thing has happened now in the hemp industry. Thankfully, a lot of people don't realize is that the hemp side of things actually is more heavily regulated as far as our testing requirements and the lab certifications and stuff than actual medicinal and recreational cannabis are, which is crazy to think about. But we just need to regulate it as a whole. People need to know what they're getting, feel confident in what they're taking, and safe in what they're taking, and that way they can continue to use it without those bad experiences. And so, I want to ask you, Dr. Kaplin, what got you into this? You said you work at Johns Hopkins and stuff. Maybe give us a little bit of just a brief background on you and then what brought you into this side in this space.
So thanks for the interest. It's always nice to talk about yourself, although it wasn't exactly what I was coming in thinking we were going to discuss. But essentially, I've been working in academia for 20 years, thought I'd, stay there until they carried me out in a box at some point one day. But by the same token, it's been a bit frustrating. We've gotten millions of publications out there on shelves, but translating them into actual things going on in the clinic and the like has been difficult. So, I'll give you my bias, which is that academia is where you go for new ideas. Industry is where you go to take those ideas and turn them into drugs. Academia isn't so good at coming up with new ideas on their own, but industry isn't. But academia is lousy at understanding the toxicology and how to fundraise to get these things. So being able to sort of sit in a place and work with people like Erez to have a discussion about what the best applications are of these drugs and to move things forward, that's what made me interested. What ultimately persuaded me was that it just got to the point that every patient I saw, had some kind of pain, had cognitive impairment, had anxiety. And I kept thinking, boy, I just wish this drug was here. I wish I could, even for compassionate use, which we can't do until we have safety studies. But there are just so many people for whom this would be a game changer. So that's, it just was getting too frustrating to keep seeing patients and keep wanting things to move faster to be able to have better treatments. We don't have anything that treats cognitive impairment in MS. There's just nothing that, no medications that can improve it. You can give them compensatory strategies, put a paste-it on the mirror when you go to sleep to remind you during the day, but nothing that'll kind of boost it. So that's what led me to cross over. I am curious, Bryce, just given your expertise, I'd be curious to know where you would think a drug like ours that's regulated, enhances cognition, doesn't appear to cause things like psychosis as best you can tell in animal models, like paranoia and the like. Where would you think it would fit into the, system that, as Erez had mentioned, is so widespread now? 39 states, I think, have some kind of legal cannabis use. So where would you think it would fit in?
I would like to see it fit in at the top level to where you don't have to be in a cannabis state to access it. That's my goal in this as a whole, as an advocate for cannabis, as someone that's trying to constantly remove the stigmatism and to push efforts forward in any effort that I can. I want access everywhere. Something like this is what people need. How many times, like I said earlier, how many times you see a medication that has its benefits are only 1 or 2 points and its list of side effects are 100 or more long? We need more access to medications, more drugs that don't have all those negative side effects, that actually work harmoniously with your body to improve the functions that you're trying to target and nothing else. And so if you can create something that targets those needs without interfering with other functions of the body, then why limit it? Why only make it accessible to certain people? That type of product should be accessible to all. I feel that this type of medicine and natural medicine, I feel that there's 2 parts of it. I love the medical side, and I think that we should definitely put more efforts into diving into that. I think more money should be spent into discovering the abilities of this plant, the different cannabinoids and the compounds, and not only what they do on their own, but what do they do when they work together and in different percentages and levels when they're added together, and how do they interact with the terpenes on a natural scale and stuff as well, because those are an important part of the plant as well. I want people to, though, also be able to freely access that. I love dispensaries. I love people to be able to go in and just get what they want. The whole thing of the nose knows. When you shop, you don't even need to really look at a label. Just smell it and your body will tell you what you need, and you'll probably have a really good experience with that product afterwards. I love what you guys are doing. That's why when it came across, I definitely wanted to have you on, and I'm always interested to see new companies, people pushing the frontier and bringing cannabis into the pharmaceutical space, because that's every drug that we can create out of cannabis that does more than pharmaceuticals are currently doing, or takes the place of a pharmaceutical or multiple pharmaceuticals, is a huge win for us.
I don't know, Erez. Bryce sounds like
Bryce is hired. He's
hired. It sounds pretty amazing. I love his, the way he thinks about the whole industry and where these pieces fit. So,
absolutely. We share that vision with you, Bryce, and that's exactly what we're doing. What we're doing with exactly for that reason. And we didn't even touch about the federal employees that are not allowed to use cannabis, right? Because it's they're not going to, hopefully won't have that issue with our drug. And just like you said, just giving access to doctors to be able to treat their patients and not have to worry about not being able to prescribe marijuana to them is tremendous. And, with all, I heard in New York, there was about 1,400 dispensaries that opened up unlicensed.
Mm-hmm.
You heard about that one? So,
I was actually there. I saw it I saw it. I could not believe what I saw in New York. I was there at the end of the year. It was quite insane. Like there was people in Chinatown, like you have the street sellers selling like the fake Louis and shoes and all that stuff. There was tables set up of cannabis. Like they had totes full of jars of cannabis, loose flower, pre-rolls, concentrates, edible, everything, everywhere at the subway stations, just like everywhere. And then, there was little bodegas just popped up, all unlicensed. There was food trucks at night selling cannabis. Like it was insane. I didn't know where I was at. I was like, this is going on in New York.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the culture, the acceptance, it's there. So we're right there with you. We believe just having another option, for someone that might want to get into the THC treatments, and like you said, might have a bad experience the first time going to a dispensary. So we can actually, I think, work along side by side with recreational and medical marijuana. It doesn't have to be either or, right? So every person is different. And everything works differently for an individual. So some patients might need the prescription route. Some patients might be okay with going to the dispensary route. So it all works hand in hand. But it's just incredible how, like you said, nature gave us, the THC, and it gave us the CBD, and it gave us all these cannabinoids. And if we can find a way to make them more accessible, more useful, more beneficial for people, why not? Why not just enhance what nature already put on this earth for us?
I agree. Our time is coming and going quickly. I know that we could sit here and talk even more. It's how it always seems. It's like the conversation started expanding. So maybe I'll go ahead and ask. I would love to have you guys on again, maybe in a few months when you guys have reached another point, maybe after you've gone through some more trials and you're on to the next phase. I would love to get an update and see where you guys are at. I love to follow up with stuff like this and just even personally, we'll exchange some information, but thank you for what you guys are doing. Thank you for just pushing the boundaries. And I hope you're not done yet either. I hope that this is just the start and that you have other things in the works. I'm sure I'm looking at Dr. Kaplin, he's shaking his head. I already knew when he started talking, like he's like me. He's got several other things and the ideas in the works, and this is just the one that he's put the most time in. So I can't wait to see what Dr. Kaplin and you, Erez, and thank you. We didn't even get into it, but just your philanthropic efforts that you have done in this community and the different startups that you've had. And like I said, there's so much more we could talk about. We will schedule another episode so we can get it on and talk some more. But thank you for what you guys are doing in this community and keep pushing. You have our support. And if anything that you would ever need, feel free to reach out. I love any way that I can help. Just be more than happy to.
Awesome. Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you, bro. Really appreciate your time.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.